Moving to the next news. Recently, former UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov shared his take on a potential matchup between featherweight champion Ilia Topuria and lightweight contender Arman Tsarukyan. In his analysis, Khabib suggested that Ilia Topuria would only have about a 20% chance of defeating Tsarukyan. That prediction raised eyebrows in the MMA community, especially given how highly regarded Topuria is at the moment. Daniel Cormier, former two-division UFC champion and one of the most respected analysts in the sport, strongly disagreed with Khabib's assessment. According to Cormier, giving Topuria only a 20% chance is not only unrealistic, but also dismissive of Topuria's proven skills and undefeated record. Cormier explained that an 80-20 prediction is extremely rare in MMA. He stated that such odds could only reasonably be applied to fighters who have consistently dominated the sport without ever suffering defeat. In his words, the only two fighters who could historically be placed in that category are Khabib himself and Jon Jones. Both men have remarkable records, with Khabib retiring undefeated and Jon Jones maintaining his status as one of the greatest fighters of all time. For fighters like them, Cormier admitted, you might reasonably say that they have an 80% chance against almost anyone because history proves how difficult it is to beat them. But when it comes to Ilia Topuria, Cormier reminded fans that the young champion is also undefeated. To suggest that Topuria only has a 20% chance against Tsarukyan is, in Cormier's view, dismissing the achievements and abilities of a fighter who has shown incredible talent, discipline, and composure in the octagon. Cormier elaborated further by saying that he doesn't believe there's a single fighter in the world right now who could be expected to beat Ilia Topuria 8 times out of 10. The Spaniard of Georgian descent has not only defeated every opponent put in front of him, but he has also done so in dominant fashion, displaying knockout power, slick submissions, and a strong fight IQ. Cormier argued that these qualities make Topuria far more than a 20% underdog in any potential matchup, including one against Tsarukyan. He acknowledged that Tsarukyan is indeed one of the brightest young contenders in the lightweight division and a formidable fighter. However, dismissing Topuria's chances so drastically doesn't make sense in the unpredictable world of mixed martial arts. Fights, Cormier noted, are rarely that lopsided at the elite level. In his view, the idea that Tsarukyan would dominate Topuria in such a one-sided fashion is simply crazy. Cormier concluded by reiterating his respect for Khabib's opinion but firmly stating that he could not agree on this point. To him, Topuria has already proven that he is a world-class fighter who deserves far more respect. Suggesting that he only has a slim chance against anyone, let alone Tsarukyan, underestimates his skills, his mentality, and his undefeated record. In short, Daniel Cormier sees Ilia Topuria as a fighter who should never be counted out, and certainly not written off with such skewed odds. Moving to the next news, Merab Dvalishvili believes Ilia Topuria could finish Islam Makhachev. UFC bantamweight contender Merab Dvalishvili has made a bold prediction about a potential clash between lightweight champion Islam Makhachev and featherweight king Ilia Topuria. Speaking recently on the Full Send podcast, Dvalishvili expressed strong confidence in Topuria's chances, going as far as to say that the undefeated Spaniard could not only compete with Makhachev, but potentially finish him. Dvalishvili began by praising Topuria's well-rounded skill set, particularly his striking power and relentless forward pressure. Ilia has what it takes to finish Islam, Dvalishvili said. If they ever fight, I think it will be a very tough matchup for both men, but Ilia has a real chance to win. He's dangerous, and he's not afraid to take risks. According to Dvalishvili, the stylistic matchup between Makhachev and Topuria is what makes this potential fight so fascinating. Islam Makhachev, much like his mentor Khabib Nurmagomedov, is known for suffocating wrestling, relentless grappling control, and the ability to neutralize opponents on the ground. However, Dvalishvili believes Topuria is one of the rare fighters who could disrupt that game plan. Ilia makes his opponents uncomfortable, he explained. He forces you to fight on his terms. If Islam tries to wrestle him, Ilia has the ability to stuff those takedowns. He's strong, explosive, and he has very good defensive wrestling. And if Islam has to stand and trade with him, that's where Ilia becomes extremely dangerous. We all know the kind of knockout power he carries in his hands. If Islam can't keep him down, then he'll be forced into exchanges, and that's where Ilia could finish the fight. Despite his confidence in Topuria, Dvalishvili was quick to acknowledge that such a contest would not be an easy task. Makhachev is currently regarded as one of the most dominant champions in the sport, riding an incredible winning streak and defeating top-tier opponents such as Charles Oliveira, Alexander Volkanovski, and Arman Tsarukyan. His mix of grappling, submission threats, and improving striking make him an extremely well-rounded fighter. It's not going to be easy for Ilia, Dvalishvili admitted. Islam is a champion for a reason. Every fight is tough at this level, and this would be one of the toughest. But I still believe Ilia has the right weapons to win. He's fearless, he goes forward, and he puts a lot of pressure on his opponents. That pressure breaks people, and if he can make Islam uncomfortable, then he has a big chance to finish him. As for whether this fight will ever actually happen, the path isn't entirely clear. Ilia Topuria recently claimed the featherweight title with a spectacular knockout win over Alexander Volkanovski, and he has expressed interest in defending his belt before moving up. Meanwhile, Islam Makhachev is continuing his reign at lightweight, with several contenders vying for a title shot. Still, a champion versus champion clash between the two undefeated stars would undoubtedly be one of the biggest fights the UFC could make. Fans are already buzzing about the possibility, and Dvalishvili's comments only add more intrigue. I hope it's going to happen, he concluded. It's the kind of fight that excites fans, and it would be a real test for both champions. Islam is dominant, but Ilia is special. If they meet inside the octagon, I truly believe Ilia can shock the world. Whether or not the UFC decides to put the two champions on a collision course, the conversation has begun. With both fighters still undefeated and looking unstoppable in their divisions, a future showdown between Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria could be a historic battle between two of MMA's most dangerous talents. Moving to the next news, former UFC bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling recently opened up on the Pound for Pound podcast about the true reasons behind his decision to accept a fight with Sean O'Malley in 2023. According to Sterling, one of the main factors that pushed him to take the bout was the belief that the fight could generate massive pay-per-view numbers, potentially reaching the million buy mark. Sterling explained that, at first, he wasn't fully convinced about facing O'Malley at that particular point in his career. However, when his manager and team suggested that the event had the potential to cross 1 million pay-per-view buys, he saw the opportunity as too significant to pass up. For a fighter, the prospect of that kind of financial upside, combined with the exposure and legacy implications, can be a game changer. Sterling admitted that the financial motivation, along with the idea of proving himself against a popular and hyped opponent like O'Malley, ultimately swayed him to accept the challenge. The fight, which took place in 2023, saw Sterling defend his bantamweight title against O'Malley, but lose via TKO in the second round. Reflecting on the outcome, Sterling revealed that if he had known beforehand that the event would not deliver the million pay-per-view buys that were promised, he might have made a very different decision. If I had a crystal ball that told me exactly how many buys we would do, I would have said, forget this. I'd rather spend my time selling Jamaican rum and enjoying a vacation, Sterling said candidly. Despite the loss, Sterling was careful to emphasize that he holds no personal animosity toward O'Malley. He acknowledged O'Malley's skills and victory, but expressed frustration with the way O'Malley carried himself after the fight. According to Sterling, his main issue is not with losing the fight, but with O'Malley acting as if he defeated the very best version of Sterling. Sterling explained that, going into the fight, he did not feel he was performing at his absolute peak. Fighters often deal with injuries, training setbacks, or other personal struggles leading into a major bout, and Sterling believes that those circumstances affected his performance. For him, the frustrating part is not the loss itself, but the narrative that O'Malley beat him at his best. That's my only gripe with him, Sterling stated. I want people to understand that he didn't beat the best version of me, and that's something I'll always stand by. Still, Sterling made it clear that he does not harbor bitterness toward O'Malley. He respects the fact that O'Malley capitalized on his moment and walked away with the victory. The honesty with which Sterling discussed the fight highlights the difficult decisions fighters face, not only in terms of their careers and legacies, but also in how financial incentives influence the paths they take. In the end, Sterling's reflections show the complexity of being a professional fighter. The decision to accept or reject a fight is rarely just about competition. It's also about the business, the stakes, the financial security of the athlete, and the narratives that follow. For Sterling, the O'Malley fight will remain a pivotal chapter in his career, one that taught him about the risks of chasing pay-per-view promises and the importance of ensuring he always competes at his very best. UFC President Dana White has once again delivered blockbuster news for fight fans, unveiling several massive events that will shake up the MMA world over the next few months. From championship clashes at Madison Square Garden to high-stakes battles in Abu Dhabi, the UFC is set to close out the year in spectacular fashion. The first announcement centers around UFC 322, which is officially set to take place on Saturday, November 15th. at the legendary Madison Square Garden in New York City. White confirmed that the card will feature a true super fight in the main event. UFC welterweight champion Jack Della Maddalena will make his first title defense against none other than former lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. This highly anticipated matchup pits champion versus champion, and it promises to deliver fireworks in front of one of the most iconic venues in combat sports history. The co-main event of UFC 322 is equally historic. UFC strawweight champion Zhang Weili, who has already accomplished everything at 115 pounds, has officially decided to vacate her title and move up in weight. She will now challenge the legendary Valentina Shevchenko for the UFC Women's Flyweight Championship. Two dominant champions from different divisions will collide in a fight that could reshape the women's landscape in the UFC. Also featured on the UFC 322 card is the return of former welterweight king Leon Edwards, who will face surging contender Carlos Prados. Prados has quickly become a fan favorite, earning 5 wins in the UFC, all by knockout. His aggressive style and knockout power make him a dangerous opponent for Edwards, setting the stage for a thrilling showdown. But that's not all. Dana White also provided updates on another highly anticipated card, UFC 321, scheduled for October 25th in Abu Dhabi. This event will be headlined by a battle for the undisputed UFC heavyweight championship between Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane. Two of the most technical heavyweights in the sport will go head-to-head, with Aspinall looking to solidify his rise as one of the division's most dangerous fighters, while Gane seeks redemption and a chance to claim the throne. In addition, the vacant UFC strawweight championship will also be on the line at UFC 321. With Zhang moving up, the belt will now be contested between number 1 contender Vera Jandiroba and number 5 ranked Mackenzie Dern. Both fighters are known for their elite grappling skills, making this one of the most intriguing stylistic matchups in recent memory. The UFC 321 card continues with more high-level action. At bantamweight, number 2 ranked Umar Nurmagomedov will take on the dangerous Mario Bautista, currently ranked 8th. Bautista has been grinding his way through the division with impressive performances, but Nurmagomedov represents one of the toughest challenges he has ever faced. The main card will also feature a heavyweight clash between number 2 ranked Alexander Volkov and the ever-improving Jailton Almeida, who has been carving out a name for himself as one of the most feared grapplers in the division. Opening the UFC 321 main card will be a light heavyweight bout as Alexander Rakic faces off against Islam Makhachev, ranked 11th. This matchup has the potential to produce another contender in the always competitive 205-pound division. With 2 stacked cards, UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi and UFC 322 at Madison Square Garden, Dana White has ensured that fans across the globe will have plenty to look forward to as the year draws to a close. From champion versus champion clashes to the rise of hungry contenders, the UFC is proving once again why it remains the premier organization in the world of mixed martial arts. Before moving on to the next news, we have a quick request for you. We're always working to improve our content and truly value your support. If you could take a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon, it would mean a lot to us. That way you'll never miss an update. Moving to the next news, Tony Ferguson reflects on his last 5 years ahead of Misfits boxing bout. Tony Ferguson is preparing to step into the boxing ring against influencer-turned-fighter Salt Papi at Misfits Boxing 22, but before the event, the former UFC interim lightweight champion opened up about the struggles and lessons from the last 5 years of his fighting career. Ferguson, once known as one of the most dangerous and unorthodox fighters in the UFC lightweight division, hasn't had his hand raised since 2019, when he defeated Donald Cowboy Cerrone via second-round TKO. That win marked the peak of his incredible 12-fight winning streak, a run that had many believing Ferguson was destined to become the undisputed champion, but since then the story has been very different. Over the past 5 years, Ferguson has suffered 8 consecutive losses against elite competition, including names like Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, and Michael Chandler. Despite this rough patch, Ferguson insists he has no regrets and remains committed to moving forward. In a recent interview with MMA Junkie, he reflected on his career, his struggles, and the mentality that has carried him through the toughest stretch of his life. "No, I'm not concerned," Ferguson said when asked about his losing streak. "At the open workouts, I didn't even throw a single punch, and that was on purpose. It's not like I'm out here trying to prove to people that I've been practicing boxing for years. I've always wanted to box. What I've been doing is showing up and putting in the work. I told my corner a long time ago, before this boxing thing even got serious, that I just wanted to show up. For the last 4 to 5 years, I've been piecing things together, getting everything aligned, just to make this happen. Those 4 to 5 years, Ferguson admitted, have been some of the most frustrating and difficult of his life. Known for his relentless pace, creative striking, and slick grappling, Al-Kuki always prided himself on being ahead of the curve in mixed martial arts. But during this difficult run, he felt like he was in uncharted territory. It was frustrating because I never fought anybody who knew MMA more than me, Ferguson explained. Nobody had more experience inside that cage, that octagon, than I did. But at the same time, it was the hardest 4 to 5 years I've ever had, and honestly it sucked. I never smiled. It was terrible, but you guys never saw that. My family never saw that, and I'm glad they didn't. Ferguson emphasized that, despite the setbacks, he never wanted the world to see him broken or defeated. His mentality has always been to protect his loved ones from the struggles he faced, and to maintain his identity as a fighter who never quits. You guys will never see me injured. You'll never see me hurt. I'll never show it on my face, Ferguson said. That's just not me, that's the magic part of me. No matter what happens, I keep going. Now Ferguson turns the page with a new challenge. His move to boxing is not just a fresh start, but also the fulfillment of a long-time dream. For years he has spoken about wanting to test himself in the sweet science, and this fight with Salt Papi represents the first step into that world. Whether Ferguson can find success in boxing after such a grueling MMA run remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, his resilience and willingness to reinvent himself are as strong as ever. The last 5 years may have been brutal, but Tony Ferguson is still here, smiling again, chasing new opportunities, and determined to write the next chapter of his fighting career on his own terms.